of this time. Of course, Monday morning musings is just a great way to start our week, sort of give some introspection, reflection, perspective to everything that's going on around us in our world. Hopefully something with depth that you can chew on, hold on to, and reflect upon as the week goes on. So today, once again, I feel like, one of these late night talk show hosts, because, third time with me is my friend, Rabbi Mike Moskowitz. And really a blessing that this year has brought us together even more so than ever before. And I look forward to us having time together in person. Rabbi Moskowitz is in New York City at Congregation Bet Simchat Torah as a scholar in residence of trans and queer studies, Jewish studies there, and is a real leader in our Jewish world, our Jewish community, especially in the LGBTQ plus world and understanding. Obviously, coming from a very traditional perspective, his insight is so valued, very different than mine, being a Reform rabbi, but I find so much of what he says resonates with me and lifts me up and helps. And so the reason for him today being with us is a book that he's published called Chaver Up, along with his colleague, Rabbi Sharon Kleinbaum of CBST, of Congregation Bet Simchat Torah. And what he has done, it says 49 rabbis explore what it means to be an ally through a modern Jewish lens. So first of all, welcome, Rabbi.
Thank you so much for having me again. It is always a pleasure.
Awesome. You're going to always be the lead rabbi in this and have the most visits to keep doing this. We're going to have fun. We look forward to being together in person, like I said, teaching together, sharing together. I want Rabbi Moskowitz coming to Temple Shir Shalom and teaching as well, and look forward to that. But for now, Chaver Up, tell me about the inception of this book, of these essays, what drove you to do this and how it's come together.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation to speak on this. I think for me, there was a moment where in my head it shifted from the frustration of like, okay, we need to create safe spaces, to the recognition that really we're obligated to like dismantle unsafe spaces. And then kind of this realization of how did we ever allow these unsafe spaces to ever be constructed, that now we need to dismantle them. And, the trans community doesn't need more thoughts or more articles for them. It's the cis community and it's the straight community that needs to change, not the queer community. So I thought a lot about like, okay, if we really wanted to have systemic change, what's like a more effective and efficient path towards that? And so instead of trying to do like the work like internally and facing inward to the community, I thought, wouldn't it be much more efficient to kind of like look outward to the world and say, okay, y'all, we need to get this together. This is not okay. And it's on us. For those of you who don't know, I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, and every so often that Southern piece comes out.
I like the traditional y'all there. Works.
Yeah, we all carry many identities. Some are more relevant, in terms of being dominantly expressed, and some are just a little bit below the surface. So my Southern identity, particularly now as Virginia changes and shifts, it's a new type of Southern pride. So my thought was, what would happen if we reached out to, let's say, 49, Jewish leaders and thought leaders and influencers in the rabbinic space to give an opportunity for them from their own tradition and own education and unique life experiences to find language to speak about what it means to be an ally for a lot of different reasons. One is it is so person specific, right? What can be affirming and validating to one can be deeply traumatic and offensive and alienating to another. And so the more language we have, the more kind of anecdotes that we have about where it worked, where it didn't work, what are the struggles of it. It is messy. It's messy for a lot of reasons. Like I think we spoke about before, allyship is awkward in part because it's predicated on the world being broken. If people were not being dehumanized, you wouldn't need other people needing to stand up for it. And one of the things that I think has happened recently in America is this wave where the awkwardness of being silent is now greater than the awkwardness of saying something. I think a few years ago, a person who's white, speaking out about, police brutality or, Black lives, mattering, it would have felt uncomfortable because it's not our lane. And now I think many people for the first time feel like, as much as it's not my lane and it feels a little bit awkward, as a human, it's my lane. As an American, it's my lane. And so like, it's a little bit uncomfortable, but I feel more uncomfortable being silent. So that was really the thought. In our calendar, traditionally, we have 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva in the time of the Mishnah dying actually from a plague, because the Gemara says they were not covered this one to this one. They didn't afford each other enough respect or honor. And that's really what the Torah is about. Is it's about elevating human dignity, loving another like we love ourselves, because there's no difference. If we want to be in a relationship with God as a parent, then we need to see all of God's children as our siblings. So the thought was, let's bring awareness during this time, just like historically there was a preparation of coming together as one person with one heart before the Torah was given on Mount Sinai. This is a good time. And so we reached out to 49 people that were as diverse as our people in terms of rabbis of color and queer rabbis and trans rabbis. And we really wanted to also model what it looks like to come together, kind of embracing this commonality of individuality.
I'm enjoying reading the essays as they come out each. For those who aren't aware, that every day of the Omer, each evening as the sun sets, a new essay is revealed in a sense. But it has been bound in this book already, and the book is available online to purchase, or at your bookstores, or wherever you buy your things, at Barnes & Noble or Amazon, whatever you like to find. And so that's it's nice to sort of chew on them one per day, right? And what you just said really strikes a chord with me. It was Rabbi Menachem Creditor, his essay a few days ago that I found really powerful personally, because his sin that he calls out in the beginning, and reaching to a Black colleague and saying, how can we help you? Right. And him being humbled in that moment and realizing that we so often do that, or we may, and unintentionally, and how much awareness is important. You said, love your neighbor as yourself, from Leviticus, from our portion next week that we read. And the power of that is part about loving ourselves too, right? That so many of us don't. And it's about knowing ourselves in order to be able to be that ally. And I'll say, so Rabbi asked me to write one of the essays in here. And that was my journey in writing it, was sort of my own awareness. And I was honest with that, and how oblivious I was at times, thinking, well, of course, supportive of the LGBTQ community. It's a non-issue. And realizing that there's more than just doing the actions. It's about talking about it. It's about being aware of that too.
Yeah, and it's such an important point. It's something that Rabbi Kleinman and I address in the introduction, is that we often kind of think about, okay, I'm an ally. I'm in this posture of giving, of creative production. I am there for others. And really, first of all, in any relationship, there's a back and forth, and allies need allies. And this work of being in community requires being in relationship. And that's about listening, and it's about recognizing the space that the other wants you to occupy. We're all, my wife, Rabbi Wendy Amstelm, also wrote one for the book, and in her she speaks about Ruth and Boaz, the story that we read by Shavuot, and she points out that we're always like the kind of the main character in our narrative, but around the allyship, we're a supporting character here, like from Ruth's perspective and from Boaz's perspective, they each saw themselves as the center figure there. But the way that we read it, it's not that way. And so I think what you're saying is so true, that when we think about like ourselves as a position of, it kind of forces us to reconcile with the fact that we're not here to be condescending, but we're also here very much to be on the receiving end, that the gift of being able to be in relationship to help advance community and a space for God to dwell requires us to realize that by being an ally, we're not doing something special. We're doing what we're supposed to be doing here, and it's on us because we inherited this world that's broken, that you shouldn't need to have allies. And so part of it, I think, is that recognition of I'm not stepping up, right? I'm trying to like undo the damage and the trauma of those who have come before us. And it does, I think, frame it in a certain way that a person becomes more humble, and also recognizes that we all rely on other people to be allies for us, whether it's around anti-Semitism, whether it's things around Israel. Like you cannot be alone in this world. It's not, you will not succeed. So we all need each other, and I think that's part of what this, I think, invites the readers to think about, like, in what ways have people been there for us, in what ways have we been there for others, and how can we really kind of come together, recognizing that we need both parts of this relationship, and indeed we embrace both parts daily.
Yeah, no doubt. So what was the biggest surprise for you in creating this? I mean, this was an enormous project. I think you reached out to me in January or February at first, right? January, I think it was, and right after the new year. And so obviously you know, 48 other rabbis were engaging this way too. So what was the surprise that one of them
Yeah. It was phenomenal to be able to be in conversation with so many people. What I found to be the most interesting is kind of the humility and the trepidation that essentially everybody said, listen, here's a draft. Let me know if it's offensive. Like, let me know, like, is this what you're looking for? Like, is this okay? And I think it speaks to like how afraid people are of being canceled, that like the difference between the intention and the impact, that like, okay, here's my heart wide open. All I want to do is do good. But what happens if that's not what this is in the way in which it's received? Can you give some sort of approbation? And it wasn't just me, it was right, other people that looking at them. And I think it's emblematic of the experience that so many people feel like it's a deterrent. Like, what happens if I get it wrong? What happens if I say something that's wrong? So as somebody who, like, as a straight cis guy in this trans and queer space, it's nearly impossible to get it right. I don't know that there's ever been a time, because even if you give like the most like amazing speech in your head, or like you show up in the way that you think like, I could have thought about this for years and I wouldn't have changed the thing, if you're speaking to even more than one person, it's not going to land the same way. And so I think part of this is also about giving permission that like, so what are you going to do? You're just going to sit on the sidelines. You're just not going to get involved because you're not going to get it perfect. When do we do things which are perfect? Nothing's perfect, but not doing it is for sure wrong. So I think that was the part that I was a little bit surprised by how deep that runs, even for people who have like been doing this for like decades, like people who really were there. I mean, some of the people here, what was also really, I guess, one other thing very quickly, we reached out to two people who had written things which we thought were really important. One was written in 1985, and it was the first, she's now retired on the West Coast, but she was kind of the first straight person to cater to a queer community. And she wrote this like really important essay that was like absolutely, it was like so far in front of anything else as a cutting edge. And we asked her if we could include it because we thought like it was important. And she said, sure. And then we put it in, and then we sent everybody the draft as a final copy. And she's actually like, it's way too dated. I'm embarrassed. And then and so we took it out. It's not in there. And so that's why I'm not mentioning her name. Right. Can you imagine the person who was literally the first person there? What was, right, that most important work of its time is now so dated, even in my own lifetime, that the person was embarrassed for it to even be connected, even to the way it was written in 1985, right? We were going to post it like this was written in 1985, but the person was like, it was too dated. So that's also an amazing kind of just perspective of how quickly things are changing for the good.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone turn you down? You don't have to mention names, but I imagine, and I'm sure some were like, oh, I'm too busy. I don't have time for this. It's not my priority, whatever. But
yeah, there were some people who, who were like, I would love to do this, but I just can't right now, which is super fine. And some people said yes, and then, felt like they actually couldn't produce something that they felt comfortable putting in, which is also fine. There were, one of the things that also came up is that this is not as diverse as we wanted it to be. I think when we first started, it was maybe 65 or 70% non-male folks. And we really wanted it to skew towards the voices that we were looking to amplify. And one of the things that's just really difficult around allyship is for the people who like life is already really hard for, asking them to dig deeper or to like put in more effort to make it easier for the rest of us, even if it's about advancing the cause, is often an unfair ask. So for the people who have, 10 people working for them, 100 people working for them, right? They can have somebody, write something and I'll fill it in to make it sound like, but for people who are like really struggling because the world is really hard for them to say, hey, can you do this thing? It often is too much. So we try to be as supportive of like, what can we do? Like if this is a function of time, like it's a bandwidth, like what can we do? So that was also something that is just part of the reality of the topography right now. It's, it's never fair, to do things without the community you're trying to support, but then to put it on them is also not fair. And so trying to figure out how do you have that balance of, we're trying to make things easier, but at the same time, like here's an ask.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I so far what I've read, and I'm trying to do it by the days and using the Omer as a time to do it. It's definitely giving diversity there, and there's great voices and teachers. Thrilled, Rick Jacobs, the president, Rabbi Rick Jacobs of the Reform Movement is in there. Rabbi Susan Talvi, who was my rabbi when I was in, I think, 8th or 9th grade, came to St. Louis right out of school with her husband, Rabbi Jim Goodman. And, Menachem Creditor, who I love his teachings. I often read some of the things he's written and benefit from that. So I'm enjoying it and finding it to be really something that's important to be reflecting upon.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for writing. It was important to me that you be part of this, because you have modeled what it looks like to be an ally for a very, very long time. And for those who don't know, you can find the daily posts at CBST's Facebook page, and tonight is Rabbi Michael Moskowitz's post. So if you want to get a flavor of what the book looks like, you can follow the daily posts. It comes out at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you can take a look tonight to read his.
Nice, thank you. Woohoo! I'm excited. So we'll drop the link in there on this post as well, both on YouTube and Facebook for those who are watching. And so you can jump on board and follow this too. And I encourage people to buy the book. And it's exciting to learn from what Congregation Bet Simchas Torah is doing as in modeling as well. Look, we believe that Temple Shir Shalom is a progressive synagogue, but I'm always aware of more that we can be doing. And, we're mainstream, we're right down the middle often. And I realize and yes, at the same time, we have a really diverse community. And so, but I think we can be a voice, the prophetic voice that we need, and to be urging people to really be an ally on so many different dimensions, and the priority of that. Love watching what you're doing, the different things that you're engaging in. You're a really masterful teacher, just in your life. And so as we conclude, what's the next big thing you're working on?
So I have a book coming out, God willing, in the fall called Graceful Masculinity. And it is a weekly, it's on the weekly Torah portion, where I take one verse and speak about an aspect of chen, of grace, as attributed to kind of the male attribute. And then there's discussion questions to bring more awareness to the way in which masculine attributes are meant to be positively deployed in society. And there will be a part of it that other organizations are taking up called Mensch Up, which is really kind of a traditional Jewish wisdom response to toxic masculinity.
Wow. Good stuff. I look forward to reading that too.
Thank you.
So, and you look at Rabbi's other book, Textual Activism, that came out about a year ago now, and right in the beginning of the pandemic. And it sounds like New York City is starting to open up a little more, and more opportunities for people to engage in person, which is a blessing as well.
Absolutely, and I can't wait for us to be able to get together in person, and to be able to share of our tradition together.
Definitely. God willing, very soon. So, hey, thank you again for being a part of this today, of Monday Morning Musings. Some good stuff on the horizon this week at Temple Shir Shalom. Tomorrow night, I'll be teaching a class, our Hot Topics class, on what is love, and talking about love in the Torah and what we see, like that verse in next week's Torah portion of Ahavta Re'echa Kamocha, and delving into some of the text around that as well at 8 o'clock. Wednesday is a trivia night at 8 o'clock as well. Lots of teams coming to play trivia and compete, and good stuff on the horizon. So stay tuned, and you'll be seeing more things happening with us. But thrilled that you're with us this morning, and wishing everyone, especially in Michigan, a safe week. Please be careful, be aware, and take care of ourselves and each other. And look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, my friend.